Now, I know that Game Week 22 isn't even over yet, but that doesn't stop me making some FPL content for you guys. So in this video, we're going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 23. All right, we're going to talk about the man of Game Week 22 so far, and that's Justin Kluivert. Correct me in the comments. Is it said Kluivert or pronounced Kluivert or Kluivert? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, I'm going to stick with Kluivert for the sake of this video. So yeah, a hat-trick away at Newcastle in St James's Park, which I think is some achievement. Going into that game, I actually somewhat backed Newcastle to keep a clean sheet. I know how good Bournemouth have been this season, but I really do think Newcastle can make St James's Park a fortress and can genuinely win and keep a clean sheet against anyone, as I think they've proven this season and in seasons gone by. So yeah, to score a hat-trick there is no mean feat. And I think in general, it's not just looking at this week in isolation as to how he's performed, but the season as a whole, he's been pretty consistent with his returns. And I think with the injuries that Bournemouth have across their front line at the moment, he's got a pretty good chance of playing every game and getting really good minutes. And another thing I really like about him is that he is the designated penalty taker for Bournemouth. And I'm not going to do a direct comparison between the two because I don't think there's any need to. But when you compare him and Semenyo, I genuinely think they're performing at around a similar sort of level from open play. But you could argue Kluivert's a better option because he's on penalties. And that leads me on to another point that I've been talking about a lot in my videos, basically, is just the sheer amount of pickable sub 6 million midfielders in the game at the moment. Now, I can't show stats for all of them because there are so many. So what I've done here, and this is a theme that will appear across this video because I've done this for a couple other positions or teams of interest coming up. This is purely my opinion, right? But I think what I've done here is selected all of the sub 6 million players or midfielders in the game that you would actually want to pick in your team. And then personally, I've ranked them. And I would say right now, in my opinion, the top three, Morgan Rogers, I'd always say Morgan Rogers is the number one sub 6 million mid. The way he's been playing for Villa this season, he's looking really dangerous and he's just an absolute favourite of Unai Emery. He's going to play every game and yeah, I think he's absolutely mega. So I put him in there. Ahmad, with the level that he's performing for Man United at the moment and the quality of fixtures that Man United have, I think you have to put him in the great category as well. And Kluivert, again, I need some help in the comments as how to pronounce it. I'd put him in there as well, just slightly ahead of Semenyo. You can see there in the good section because he's on penalties. And I just really like penalty takers. I think it just gives them such an edge in the game. So yeah, those would be my top three. In terms of the good category, again, if you disagree with this, feel free to disagree. You know, FPL is all about different opinions. You know, if we all had the same opinion, we'd all have the same team and the game would be really boring. So if you disagree with any of these picks, please just let me know in the comments. But in terms of good picks, I'd have Semenyo, Alanga, who's in good form. Obviously, Murphy, who's starting regularly for Newcastle, who are also in good form. Ismail Assar and Iwobi. I'd probably have these guys as good picks. And then Enzo and Smith Rowe, I'd say are okay. For me, I'd say these would be kind of all these players, the last couple to have on the list of sub 6 million midfielders to pick. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this tier list. All right, so moving away from midfielders, I wanted to talk about defenders for a second. And I think there are 4 defenders in the game that stood out to me that have at least performed so far quite well in Game Week 22. You've got Anthony Robinson, who's just kept a clean sheet, and Lewis Hall, who's got an assist from a corner. Both of these guys coming in just, well, in and around 5 million, both in and around similar ownership, and both putting up relatively similar levels of return so far this season. So we add them up, I'd say it's going to be assists plus clean sheets, right? It's total returns. So Hall has 4 assists and 5 clean sheets for 9 returns, and Robinson has 6 assists and 2 clean sheets for 8. So they're pretty close in terms of total returns. But you probably say that Hall has the better fixtures. So, and ultimately, in my opinion, if I were to pick one of the two, I'd say Lewis Hall if I was comparing them. I think I personally back, despite what's just happened today against Bournemouth, I think their track record defensively over recent games, Newcastle, have been better than Fulham. And I would also say Robinson, whilst he's gotten, I think he's on 10 assists now for the season, which is incredible. Quite a lot of his assists have been, I don't want to use the word scabby, but I think that's about all I can say to describe them. They've been lucky. And I'm not sure the level of returns, attacking returns at least he's got in this season, is sustainable. Whereas I do think Hall's are. And I'd I'd make a bit of a claim that Lewis Hall is turning into a bit of a Trippier 2.0 in terms of what we could remember Trippier being like for Newcastle in seasons gone by. You know, attacking returns and clean sheets kind of magnet. And then just at a slightly cheaper price point, we've got Munoz and Kirkez, both sitting at 4.8 million. And over recent game weeks, both putting up a similar level of returns as well. Munoz, I would say, is certainly looking more attacking than Kirkez is. It just so happens that Kirkez has actually gotten more returns. I think Munoz is basically playing like a winger for Crystal Palace, and owners that have had him so far, I guess you take your clean sheet in Gameweek 22, but he's been really unlucky not to get attacking returns. So I'd look at those stats. We can see there shots on target. Munoz has had more than Kirkez, for example. I would personally put Munoz as higher than Kirkez in terms of attacking potential, but I would probably put Kirkez better than Munoz in terms of clean sheets. However, when you look at the upcoming fixtures, Bournemouth with Nottingham Forest, Liverpool and Southampton, obviously that Southampton one's an easy game, whereas Crystal Palace have got Brentford, Man United and Everton. I'd say he probably has the better fixtures, does Munoz. So, yeah. I think if I were to pick one between the two, I'd go for Munoz. But again, I open up the debate because similar to what we've just had with the sub 6 million midfielders, there's a whole bunch of these sub 5 million defenders that you could pick in the game. In terms of, well, I think there are so many, I'm not even going to have okay picks. I'm just going to have great and good. I think genuinely all of the players I've listed here, you could pick in your team. And especially, you know, I've gone for Mykolenko and Young, who in normal circumstances, I probably wouldn't have on this list. But given they've got a double game week in 24, I have to give them a little bit of love. In terms of great picks, you know, they haven't played yet in Game Week 22, but I do think the Nottingham Forest defenders just have to be up there. So I really like Milenkovic. I really like Neco Williams from Nottingham Forest. Those for me would be my standout too, just because I think they offer a little bit more attacking threat than Murillo does. I put Murillo in the good category. However, one thing I guess you could say about Murillo is he does seem to be slightly better for bonus points. So whilst he's not quite getting the level of attacking data that wingback Williams or fullback Williams and Milenkovic, the set piece danger, is getting, he's still offering something pretty decent from bonus points. Outside of that, obviously Kirkez and Munoz, who we've just mentioned, are, in my opinion, pretty great picks. And then Howson, as well as Bournemouth, comes in a little bit cheaper than Kirkez. Obviously offers a little bit less attacking threat, but to be fair to him, from set pieces, he is still dangerous. So I would have all of those guys as pretty great picks at that price point so far. Again, I haven't mentioned Robinson and Hall because they're over 5 million now. So this is just cheap sub 5 million defenders. But, you know, if you can stretch to Robinson and Hall, they're obviously great picks as well. In terms of the good picks that I haven't mentioned, Aït-Nouri, Livramento and Castagna. Looks like Livramento is first choice right back for Newcastle, but Trippier is getting minutes. So I'd be a little bit concerned about just quite how many minutes he's going to get going forwards. So I can't really call him a great pick for that reason. Mykolenko and Young, obviously, with their double game week coming up. Then Murillo and Aït-Nouri, who, well, Murillo I've just spoken about. Aït-Nouri, I just think with his attacking potential for Wolves, he's always going to be a sort of option, but I don't really like what I'm seeing from Wolves defensively to call him a great pick. And then Castagna of Fulham as well. Obviously, they've just kept a clean sheet in Game Week 22, and he comes in substantially cheaper than Robinson does. Obviously, I don't think he lays a glove on him in terms of quality of player, but whilst he's starting for Fulham, I think you have to consider him an option. And I think the whole point around these sub 5 million defenders and the sub 6 million midfielders, I'm going to talk about them here, is my best way of playing it is simply to pick your favourite 1, 2, 3, depending on how many you need to get in to fit your formation, and then just stick with them and just be patient with the ones that you've picked. As long as you pick ones from this great and good category, you're going to get returns. It's just a matter of some game weeks these players might not return, and others in this category will. You'll feel tempted to buy the ones that do return. You'll be chasing points and just dig yourself a hole. Whereas if you stick with 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how many you need to pick, and be patient, that's where I think you'll maximise your points. I know this video is about Game Week 23, but I don't think you can ignore the fact we've got a double game week coming up in Game Week 24. So whilst I've just spoken about like the hot property players coming out of Game Week 22, I think if you're making transfers to 23, you've got to do so while being cognizant of this double in 24. So just to remind you, it involves Liverpool and Everton, as we know. They play each other in the Merseyside derby that's been rearranged due to the bad weather on Wednesday the 12th. And then on Saturday the 1st, we got Bournemouth playing Liverpool and Everton playing Leicester. So that means the double game week for Liverpool is Bournemouth and Everton. The double game week for Everton is Leicester and Liverpool. Now, outside of Mikolenko and Young, who I've just mentioned from Everton, and maybe Jordan Pickford as well, I don't really think there's any other Everton players I'd really consider right now. Stuff might emerge over the next couple of game weeks, but right now I can't honestly recommend an Everton player. So what I've done here is similar to the tier list you've just seen. I put together my opinion on where I think the Liverpool assets sit in terms of how I pick them. So I've got a good, okay, and bad category, similar to what the other tiers have. And in terms of the good Liverpool assets, I think there are 5 that I would genuinely recommend picking. And one, actually, I'd say has a little bit of doubt about them. Salah and Slot would be my top 2. And I say Arne Slot because obviously the assistant manager becomes available in Game Week 24. And I actually think Game Week 24 is a good time to use it. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'd say Arne Slot is a great option. I'd say Salah is obviously a great option. Van Dijk doesn't really offer a whole lot of attacking threat. But one thing you do know with Van Dijk is that he's just going to get you security of minutes. He's going to play both games of the double for 90 minutes unless he gets injured. But, if he stays fit, you can't really, any player can get injured, right? So I don't think that's really a talking point. He's absolutely nailed on for Liverpool. Trent, I really do like. I think on paper, if he plays every game, he's obviously better than Van Dijk. But I would question, just with form, he's had a good game, I guess, against Brentford. But just with recent form and the fact he's got Conor Bradley sitting alongside him, is there a chance that he maybe misses one of those 2 games? Maybe. I don't think he misses the Merseyside derby, but could he potentially get a rest on Saturday the 1st against Bournemouth? Because Bournemouth, you say that, Bournemouth's a really important fixture as well, isn't it? Because they're really good. They've just beaten Newcastle. You're not going to just ease through that game and not start Trent. And then he's probably going to play the Merseyside derby. You're likely not going to rest players for that. So I think there's a fair argument that Trent plays both games. But I just have in the back of my mind Conor Bradley potentially replacing him. I like Konate. I think with the sheer amount of injuries Liverpool have along their back line, I would say Konate's likely to start both games. And I think, if those injuries stay in place until the derby or until the double game week, and we'll know a bit more coming into the game week, I guess. But I would probably pick Konate over Van Dijk and save the cash. And then this opinion might differ from yours, and that's totally cool. But for me, outside of Salah, yes, there are really other really good Liverpool attacking assets on paper to pick. But I would just always ask the question, are they going to play both games? Jota, Gakpo, Diaz, namely the 3. Obviously, Nunes has just come on in Game Week 22 and scored a brace against Brentford. So he's another option as well. Jota could well be fit by then. I just think there are so many players outside of Salah to play the rest of the positions that I'd be hesitant picking them. Robertson, I think, is even less trustworthy to start than Trent. Tsimikas has played against Brentford and they kept a clean sheet and won the game. I think Robertson has dropped off a little bit this season as well. By the way, I do think Liverpool should just buy Anthony Robinson at this point. I think Robinson is the best left back in the league, and if they bought him for Robertson, wow, they'd be crazy with Liverpool. And then I put Alisson on the okay as well. I think he's decent. I just don't see why you'd spend so much on a goalkeeper when you could just go for sales and pick 3 other Liverpool players. And I do think long term, I don't know, I just feel like Alisson is quite injury prone, and I'm not sure quite how long you can get away with having him in your team before he gets injured again. And then I'd probably look any of the other Liverpool players. I wouldn't go really anywhere near. And I mentioned just then for the double game week that the assistant manager is pickable or is playable. And there's also a potential second double game week. I don't think it's very likely, but there's a potential second double game week in 25 involving Tottenham and Fulham. So what you could potentially have is 4 games in 2 game weeks from your assistant manager if that plays out. And I'm just looking at the assistant managers here. And I think there's an opportunity, definitely, to use it in 24. If you want to play it safe, I'd go for Slot. But I do think there could potentially be some upside if you play it on David Moyes. And I'm looking mainly at that Liverpool-Everton game. And it's how you think it's going to play out, really. And do you want to take a risk? Because I just think there are so many points available from this assistant manager. So say, especially on a double game week, say, for example, Liverpool just win both games. They score, 3 goals in the game. 3 goals in each game is not outrageous for Liverpool. So you get 12 points for 2 wins and then, 1 point for a goal. So 12 points for 2 wins and 6 points for 6 goals, 3 goals in both games. what's that, 12 plus 6, 18 points. 2 points for a clean sheet. So say they keep 1 clean sheet, that's 20 points from 1 week for your assistant manager. And just going back to the price, you're paying 1.5 million for that potential of points. And then there's also, as you're probably already aware, I'm kind of teaching you how to suck eggs talking about assistant manager scoring points. But, you know, if you pick David Moyes and somehow he scrapes either a win or just draws against Liverpool, you get the bonus points. And I don't know. I think there's real potential to score well from the assistant manager. And I do think double game week 24, whilst it's obviously the first game week it's available, I don't think you jump in the gun using it then. I think there's a genuine opportunity to deploy it. You know, you got Slot there at 1.5 million. Most people could probably afford to get him straight in. And if you need to save a bit of cash, David Moyes. Now, genuinely, with the way the points work, I think both of them are pickable for the double. So yeah, I just wanted to get the assistant manager in there because I've spoken about it quite a lot in my recent videos, and I want to keep banging on about it because I think it's really powerful. And if deployed correctly, I genuinely think this assistant manager chip has the power to be the best chip in the game. I wanted to talk about Erling Haaland quickly, and I'm going to lead on to a player that I'm going to recommend as well. So skip forward about 30 seconds if you don't want to hear about Erling Haaland. I've still got him in my team, and I'd imagine I'm not totally alone in that. People might have bought him recently or may have just held him like I have, but even I think that game week 23 is the time to get rid of him. The fixtures turn a little bit disgusting, really. Chelsea, Arsenal, Newcastle, Liverpool, Tottenham, and then after that he's got Nottingham Forest. So that's 6 really considered Nottingham Forest fixtures. Trust me, it's Nottingham Forest after that. They're pretty awful. And yes, you know, he could do well in some of these games, but ultimately you're probably not going to captain Erling Haaland for any of these fixtures. And with the money that you're spending on him, the returns he's getting at the moment, even though he's just signed his 9.5-year deal, and even if he does do well against Ipswich, I think he could potentially be a sell. And one striker that stood out to me so far, at least in game week 22, is Jean-Philippe Mateta. He's got 4 goals in his last 5 appearances. And I think the run of fixtures he's got coming up are really, really nice. He's 7.2 million. So, I mean, it saves you, what, over 7 million on Erling Haaland if you were to make the switch. And he's 4.5% owned. So he's a nice differential. Palace are playing a lot better than they were at the start of the season. Really picked things up. 4 goals in his last 5. 5 pretty decent fixtures. Like, you could back Crystal Palace and Mateta to score in genuinely all of those games, I think. And yeah, took the penalty as well in game week 22. They are likely to be shared with Eze. But I believe so far Mateta has had all of the penalties that Crystal Palace have won this season. I'm pretty sure that's true. Let me know in the comments if it's not. So yeah, I just wanted to get a bit of Haaland and Mateta chatting at the end. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating and let me know in the comments what you think of some of those opinions I gave on the tier list. So rather than showing the models and going through my usual player-by-player view, I thought it would be a bit interesting to mix things up. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. And yeah, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. It should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.